welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Gemini, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of October. Oh, what? I hope you're well. This year's flown by. I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss for you today. Here it is. What do I have to tell you? There'll be an extended at the end of this if it resonates with you and you'd like to explore it a little bit deeper. That's the first link in the description box. The second link in the description box is to the 6-month overview that I did for each of the signs. It runs from July to December. We're more than a third of the way through that period now, so I've knocked that down accordingly. If you haven't had a chance to go and check it out, I think it's worth it. I really do. Those readings last anywhere between 2 and 3 hours long. So, you know, get yourself a brew and make yourself comfortable, that sort of thing. And obviously, if you support me on Patreon, you get access to all that kind of extended content for no extra cost, so it's worth bearing in mind. What else do I have to tell you? Oh, Mercury retrograde. Yeah, I've got a bit of a feeling that I'm in for quite the kicking on this one for some reason. All of the things that we would usually associate with the negative aspects of Mercury retrograde started hitting as soon as the shadow period came in. We have a shadow period of 2 weeks on the run up to Mercury retrograde, where the power is building, or the energy is building at least, and then we have 2 weeks of the retrograde itself, and then Mercury goes direct, but we have a 2-week period after that where the energy is winding down again. I'll close the window in a moment. I know it's very blustery here today as well. Fuck it, I'll do it now, right? So, we will be very much in the thrall of Mercury retrograde by the time you see this reading. And we'll have a good 4 weeks of that energy being at play. There are a few things that you can do to not just survive this period but also thrive. And to be honest, as air signs, you might find that this is it is quite a powerful time for you anyway. It's in Libra. And the first and foremost is simply that it's not a good time to start anything new. It's a good time to finish up things that you have already started, because the nature of the energy is about tying up loose ends with things, you know. So it's not a good time to sign contracts, but if you absolutely have to, then make sure that you get a second or perhaps even a third pair of eyes on what it is that you're signing. Make sure that you properly understand what you're putting your name to before you do it. You can expect travel mishaps, delays. Anything involving technology has, for some reason, a heightened capacity to break itself during this time. I've been struggling with that a lot. And communication generally is almost a little awkward at this time. People seem to find it difficult to say what they actually mean, and conversely, we will do the same. But also, we don't always hear what the other person is trying to say. We're kind of putting our own filter on that, and so it pays to be quite gentle with your communications in this time if you can possibly manage it. Is there anything else? No, that's it really. I mean, if you use the energy for what it's there for, which is to pay attention to these tidying up of loose ends, making sure that you've done everything properly, then there's no reason why you can't fly with this. As it is, I think I'm highly distracted at this moment in time, and so the technology is a really obvious thing that just keeps cacking up. I actually said in a post recently that I'd really like to be able to attribute some of the cock-ups that I've been doing recently to Mercury retrograde, but there really are any operator error. But the thing is that that's kind of Mercury retrograde energy anyway. The message is to slow down and make sure that you are paying very present attention to everything that you are doing in the here and now. There's no rushing with this. I'm rushing, Gemini. So, with all of that out of the way, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. Can I have 3 cards for Gemini? Ooh, we've got the 8 of Wands in your recent past. I like that. It's present, please. We have the Lover's card, which is your card, Gemini, in your present energy. I like that very much. What's coming towards Gemini in October, please? Thank you. We have the Wheel of Fortune. Got the Six of Cups at the bottom of the deck here, and I think that that's important. Literally just got through talking about Mercury retrograde, and here we have a card that talks about the past. But the thing that I like about this particular Six of Cups, have a look there, right, is that whereas in other Six of Cups cards across other decks, what we have is a scene, right? And we extrapolate from that it's children or it's childhood or it's the past of some sort of way, right? It's a point that is not now, it is back then. This is all going on up here. This isn't like the re-emergence of people from your past. This is a resurfacing of memories, perhaps. And I feel for you like it's highly likely that you will be changing. Changing, is that the right word? That your personal narrative about certain things from the past will be shifting slightly. It doesn't have to be a huge monumental tower-like change. It can just be, you know, a level of nuance that comes in that makes you see things differently. Right? It's followed here by the High Priestess, and I actually very much like that as a combination. But I should point out that the two cards that sit behind those are the Five of Pentacles and the Ten of Swords. What we've got during this time, Gemini, is your mind drifting back to very difficult points in your past, right? Not where you are right now, and I think that that's important to reiterate and underline. With this Five of Pentacles is a card of poverty, it's a card of lack, it's a card of not having your basic needs met. And, you know, if this is a situation where you were an adult, then this is where you did not meet your own basic needs. But if it's going back as far as childhood, then it is where those people who were charged with protecting you and keeping you safe did not, in some way, achieve that. You know, there are worse things than to grow up poor, although, you know, modern society would have you believe that that's something entirely different. You know, money does not make a childhood. Love and care and nurturing and a feeling of safety and security make those things. And as I'm saying this, I feel like that is very much more the kind of poverty that you experienced as a child. The Ten of Swords underneath that. It speaks of lots of things, and it certainly speaks of, you know, that situation no longer being entirely operative. But I'm getting flashes of my own past as I'm looking at this here with you, and I wonder if there's a correlation between the two, because what I'm seeing here is willful neglect, is a type of abandonment that has been consciously done. You know, this chap who's walking past the man who is, you know, speared to the floor effectively with all of these swords is very deliberately not looking at the man who is on the floor. And there's, you know, there seems to be some sort of coastal path, but the path is going down through the water. And although I've never noticed it before, it appears that there is a sword in the hand of the man who is walking past too. And it's like your pain was ignored. It's not that it wasn't seen, it's that it was actively ignored. And well, you don't know if the man who is walking is the one who put the other swords in you, but they've certainly got one to thrust in on the way past without looking at you, without acknowledging you. Now, what I like about this is that there is a solemn and somewhat somber recollection going on here in this Six of Cups, but it's paired up here with the High Priestess, and the High Priestess is an incredibly powerful card of the internal. She's a very powerful card of wisdom and insight and seeing things that perhaps one did not see before. You know, she's often associated with secrets. And, you know, perhaps that is fair, perhaps it's not. I think that kind of varies from reading to reading, because there's usually some sort of pejorative angle to a secret, you know. But of all of the symbols on the card here in front of me, it is the keys on the belt and the door that lies behind the High Priestess that is drawing my eye the most. And it's like through the exploration of what has been, or what was at some point, a very difficult period of your life, or perhaps multiple difficult periods of your life, what we have is you hitting a point where you realize you have the keys. Here, they're just hanging on your belt, and there are doorways for you to go through. There is something for you to learn, something more for you to learn from a past situation. Now, I've no doubt that we'll end up coming back to those shadow cards. Yeah, okay. Going with the Knight's Sun Tarot, which always means it's going to be a little bit deep. I cut the deck, and there the High Priestess is as well. Like this thing where I see the High Priestess as kind of sitting somewhere between the end and the beginning. And I know that that isn't something that you see, you know, in the order of the tarot. We have the Fool, and then we have the Magician, and we have the High Priestess, and then we have the Empress, you know. But there is something about the occupation of space between an end and the beginning. And it is perhaps the passivity, it is perhaps the acceptance, but it's perhaps the seeing the unnecessariness, unnecessariety, I don't know, right, of trying to change something, right? Rather, it's about making our peace with it and understanding the truth as it exists. Also knowing that the truth, although we would like to think that it is binary, it's actually quite multifaceted. And when we seek to find an absolute binary truth, what we're doing, I think, more or less, is taking our own personal experience and not the factors, the multifacetedness of the input and influence of other people on that situation. Does that make sense? Because you could have had a really, really terrible time, right? But what is not known to you is that, say, your mother had a really, really terrible time, like really, really awful, like enough to make you go, oh my God. Now, what would be important for you at this point, hypothetically speaking, you know, where you were trying to make some sort of peace with this, is kind of pulling yourself out of the situation, like taking away the childlike response to the pain. And that's often what we are repeating over and over again. And look at the bigger picture, look at the generational trauma that's come through, you know? Because what we're not looking to do is attribute blame. What use is blame? How does that help you get over anything? Well, for some people, they may think that it does help. This wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that I was like this. And I often see this in shadow work. People find the first stage of shadow work really quite easy, right? Oh, somebody did this to me, right? And I had a subconscious reaction, and then I sat with this for, you know, years, and I repeated patterns because this was instilled in me. But what they don't like to do is then go to a point where they go, and where now have I begun to repeat those patterns too? You know, where have I gone so far the other way? In fact, away from what I experienced, that I've actually invented a whole new level of trauma, you know? The presence of the High Priestess is indicative of peace and acceptance and wisdom and all of these things, but she is also, for me, extremely symbolic of chaos. And the fact that my eye was being drawn to the key and the door seems to me to indicate that during this time, what you're seeing is an emergence from chaos, right? You've been sat in a chaotic place. And I'm not saying that for the last 20 years you've just been like, oh my God, like this. But subconsciously, right? There have been things that have been rolling around in there, and there are things that you have worked on and you've worked through, and that's all good. But there's a fundamental part of the chaos that remains. And you've known it was there, and you can't... It feels in some way impenetrable, like we're trying to get through these cards here. Like you just can't quite find an in on it. Except that the door's appeared now, Gemini. The door is appearing. And the understanding is that you have the keys on the belt the whole time. It is not about seeking to blame other people for anything. It's about finding your way out of the chaos and finding a way for you to live, or finding a way for you to slough off whatever heavy armor you've worn on the outside to mask the chaos on the inside. And release it. You know, it seems like two entirely opposite concepts, to be peaceful and chaotic at the same time. But the High Priestess holds that for me. She holds the ability to be able to do that for me. Now, I've got two major arcana cards here for October. One of them is yours. That fills me full of great heart anyway. I thought, no, the Magician is at the bottom of the deck, is the other card of Gemini. Let's pull some clarifiers. I've been here for ages, 17 minutes, and I haven't even fucking finished pulling the cards yet. I doubt people will be turning off in their droves. Tell me about the Eight of Wands, please. Fuck. We have the Ten of Cups. We have the Page of Swords. And we have the Hanged Man. Interesting, the second Piscean card that we've had in here. Now, we just had the Pisces full moon at the time that I'm recording this one. When is this? 23rd of September, right? 20th September was full moon in Pisces. And I feel like this work has started around then. And maybe it's been conscious and maybe it's not. Maybe it's just bubbling up to the surface. But it's not done yet. The full moon almost seemed to have been providing the right environment for you to do this work, particularly going into Mercury retrograde, you know? Tell me about the Lover's card, please. Thank you. We have the Two of Cups, the Lover's card, and we have the Four of Swords. Tell me about the Wheel of Fortune, please. We have the Five of Swords, we have the Nine of Cups, we have the Page of Wands, and we have Temperance. This is extraordinary. And we're back to the Magician at the bottom of the deck. This is, oh, goodness me. Goodness me. We have the Ace of Wands directly behind the Magician. This is a very powerful time for you, Gemini. Like, I mean, you've been kicking out megawatts of energy for months now. And there is definitely a sense that this is internal work for you. At this point, this does not involve other people. You know, we've got here, you know, with those memories being back here, back of the mind. They're not for the consumption of other people. This is very deep personal work at this time. So the first card that we've got in your recent past is the Eight of Wands, which is a card that is often given to speak about communication, but these wands are pretty static. They're not moving at all. And it is usually the ones that are moving. Instead, we have a flock of geese that are flying over the top. And the fact that the wands are not in motion, but the geese are. You know, the card is not the 8 of geese, it's the 8 of wands. The 8 of wands are planted here. Geese flying over the top. And it feels, as I'm talking, it feels like there's an awareness that there is a conversation coming up here. But I don't feel like this conversation is with people outside of you. It feels like it was a dialogue that was beginning to be opened by you, to you, with you. You know, that's very high priestess sort of energy there. But we've got the 10 of cups, the page of swords, and the hanged man here. And the 10 of cups is, you know, it's complete emotional fulfillment of more than just you, right? It is often the happy family. It is, you know, good social relationships. But in the Night Sun, it really draws my attention to the collective and the ways in which we are all connected. Now, do you remember when I just said a few minutes ago, I was talking about the necessity of kind of almost contextualizing your pain, your challenging experiences, and not removing from it the possibility of a wider understanding of the circumstances into which you were born. This is by no way me trying to say that you need to just get the fuck over it, right? Don't paraphrase me in that way, because that's not what I'm doing here. It's about widening your appreciation of the circumstances around things, because there are. There are troubled people in your past. This is the problem. I've often said, I didn't think that my mother had any business having children. Like, I don't think that she should have had children, because she was so damaged, you know. And it was only as I got older that I kind of thought about that. And then as I got older still, I was like, well, okay, but, you know, having me has given me a very particular skill set, set me up for a very particular kind of life experience, which now I feel benefits me greatly. Doesn't mean I enjoyed it, doesn't mean I like it, doesn't mean that I'm happy that it happened to me. But certainly I find myself looking with more compassion towards others who were involved in the creation of my early experiences, right? And is this something that comes with maturity and wisdom and age? Possibly it is. But ultimately, it is about getting to peace for me, right? It's not just because I'm a really good person. I just really want everybody to be happy and all that. And no, it's nothing to do with that. It's a very conscious process of self-work. And it's like, right, okay, well, if I've done all of that I can with me in the here and now, like, what are the things that are popping up around it? What do I need to intellectually explore that these people did not, right? And when we're talking about generational karma, and there is definitely overtones of that here for you, then it does require a certain level of objectivity, because if you sit in the middle of it and feel a victim, you miss things, and you miss the whole point of it, actually, because you're still casting around and looking for someone to blame. We're not in that business, right? We've got the Page of Swords and the Hanged Man. Now, both of these speak very specifically to a change in perspective for me, right? With the Hanged Man, it's obvious, like, he's literally upside down on a fucking tree, right? He's literally seeing the world from a different perspective. There is also, you know, notions of submission and sacrifice in some ways, except that there is really no sacrifice here for you. The only things that you are sacrificing are, you know, the roots of potential resentment, the roots of potential chaotic subconscious drama in your own head, of the sort that holds you back, the sort that limits you in some way or another. And in fact, well, you know, in the way that injures you, we've got essentially what looks like tentacles coming and drawing on on this Hanged Man. This is here, and they look like they're tipped with blood. You know, the capacity for your subconscious to still injure you long past the event actually being there in front of you. Like, these are the patterns that we're repeating. Again, just like the High Priestess with the key here, this Hanged Man has a key in his hand as well, right? And this is different decks, but the keys keep coming up here. This time, you know, the cage is around his head. It's not that he's stuck in a room with no open doors. He's like, his head is literally caged. But you have the key in your hand. You have the capacity to take yourself down at the point where you have reached that point of knowledge. And get yourself away from whatever this fucking triffid thing is that is causing you pain, right? Seeing the world differently. With the Page of Swords, all the pages seem to indicate to me like a shift in a direction, because it starts right at the bottom, right? It's the lowest rung of the court hierarchy. There's so much more experience to gain before you get to king status with here. But, you know, this is your page. It's a Page of Swords. It's about a different way of thinking. And the three of these cards here, to me, speak about a journey that it seems to be occurring. Like I said, I would not be surprised to find that this started around the Pisces full moon for you just a few days ago. Maybe a few days on the run-up to. Wow, it was so fucking emotional. It was ridiculous. I think I just felt like tears pricking my eyes more times in about 3 days before the full moon than in the last year. It was absolutely ridiculous, and there were all sorts of things setting me off. But this is a journey. This is the beginning of a journey, the beginning of a dialogue with oneself, where there is a change in perspective going on. On what came together to create you. And by what, I mean the people, and I mean the circumstances, and I mean the history. Okay? Now, in your present energy, we've got the Lover's card, and I like this a lot. Like I said, it is the Gemini card. And whenever we've got a sign showing up like this in their own reading, we are definitely talking about them stepping into their power in some way, owning some part of themselves, which perhaps has not been accessible to them. But certainly showing up authentically, right? There's a lot of self-identity work here. It seems to be at play, right? And it brings in the emotional, but also the situational too, you know, and definitely the mental. And it's so I like the card for that reason, but I also like what it represents, and that is a choice. Yeah, fundamentally, it is a choice. Not whether, you know, you're going to go this way or that way, but the act of stepping up and making a decision about something, right? We're talking conscious co-creation. We're talking about creating space within oneself so that new things can flood in. And that really does feel, Gemini, like what you are doing at the moment. And you're doing it very authentically. I mean, both the Gemini cards are here, very visible, very present. But with this Ace of Wands underneath here, which is indicative of new creativity, new passion. You know, the one suit is all about living and the way that you live, and there's huge potential with the Ace of Wands there. But it feels like a shift again, a shift in the way that you live, a shift in the way that you experience living. Just as there's a shift going on in your emotions and a shift going on in your intellect too, it seems like with both compassion and objectivity, you're looking for answers. You're looking for more because you want more out of where you are right now. Like you want more out of your life experience than the mundane. Like the mundane and the mediocre just do not seem to me like they're anything that you're even remotely interested in. Like, it's got to be magic as fuck or fuck off. is the vibe that I'm getting here. But there's an innate understanding, a very deep, very sophisticated understanding that shift is occurring in here first before you go anywhere else. And that is so powerful, Gemini. But we've got the Two of Cups and we've got the Four of Swords here, and this is quite interesting because this is a card that speaks about relationships, and clearly relationships are important and are being explored with you at this point. But it also talks about intimacy, how you experience intimacy, right? Do you throw yourself in too much? Do you keep people at arm's length? Do you throw yourself in really enthusiastically, and then when, you know, you've been there for a little bit, you're like, ah, fuck, do you back off? Or, you know, on the face of it, do you appear to have perfectly normal, perfectly well-functioning relationships, but you know, possibly because your partner's told you, that there are times where there is a bit of you in here that is completely impenetrable. Yeah? It's usually our partners who find those things. But we've got it with the Four of Swords here. Now the Four of Swords is peace, in some ways. It's meditation too. But it's also a level of detachment. And I think that this is important because it seems to me to be an understanding of the ways in which you can detach emotionally. You have detached emotionally at points, right? Where your very survival has you know, depended on it. You can strap those swords to your feet and get up there and like a fucking, what are they called? Stilts. Using them like stilts and just being all like, I am not making contact with the ground. Thank you very much. I'm just going to hobble around on these swords. You know, I'm going to rely on my mind. I'm going to rely on my mouth, possibly Gemini, to get me around the fact that my heart hurts sometimes. And I don't know why, and I don't know how to fix it. You know, in the Night Sun Tarot here, we've got this heart in the middle, and it's very beautiful, and we've got the cups on either side. But the water, which is the very thing that actually represents emotions here in this card, is sloshing up around the heart and sloshing down around the heart. Let me see if I can show you this. It's not really making contact with it. Now, it seems to me that the decision that you are making, based on, you know, the preparatory work that the full moon seems to have made for you, is dealing with this, choosing to deal with this, because you want a particular kind of life for yourself, and you want it to be full of all sorts of things. But very careful work has brought you down to here. This is the issue. This is what needs to change. You know, this is what needs the input of the High Priestess and the Hanged Man and the Page of Swords, changing the way that you think. Again, I'm going to bring you back to the Magician and the Ace of Wands. You have everything that you need to effect this change within you. Eight of Swords is just behind that, interestingly enough. One might wonder if, you know, the fizziness, but it's the best way I can describe it, the fizziness of the Gemini brain. Don't stick with things too, you know, don't stick with one thing for too long. It's flitting about. It's always looking for input. Whether that is in and of itself some sort of defense mechanism from just stopping and looking at the thing. Stops you thinking too hard on one thing or another. Although, you know, you can overthink as well as the next person. Well, what we've got coming towards you in October is very, very interesting and beautiful. Actually, I really do think it's quite beautiful, Gemini. We've got this Wheel of Fortune here. Now, that is a change in fortunes. It is an improvement in fortunes, right? The wheel goes up and down and all that sort of thing. We are led to believe, you know, at some points we're going up and some points we're going down, and you just roll with it, you know, ride the wave. But in the Tower of the Abyss, we don't have that, you know, standard cartwheel that we understand that just revolves over and over again. What we've got is somewhat of a spiral with an eye in the center. And I think that in lived experience, when it comes down to it, we often don't understand the revolution of the wheel quite as well as we think we do. Yes, there are markers for success and there are markers for failure, and you know, we tend to kick the shit out of ourselves for the failures and get very, very excited about the successes, you know, but like so many things, there are levels, there are grades, and often when we look back, we can see that something started to go wrong far, far, far before we noticed that it was going wrong, you know. And conversely, we can see that things were actually much, much better than we thought they were once when we were in there at the very, very point, you know. But latterly, as we've, you know, looked back, we can see actually, you know, it wasn't that bad. It was all right. And I feel like this card here speaks to that. It's not a clear revolution. It seems to take deviations, and we don't really know whether actually this point is up or down or whatever, you know, because it's always got to be compared against the last place that you were at, right? So you're here and the last place was here. Well, shit's going down. It's not that good, you know. Conversely, if you are here and the last point was down here, then obviously things are getting better. But there are all sorts of, you know, little ducats and, you know, dips and troughs and peaks in between all of those things. It's about staying present and just riding that wave. And it can speak to opportunities, but it also speaks to learning something. Learning something really, really profound. And that is what seems to be being laid out for you here, Gemini. Because, I put them in the right order like that. 5 of Swords, 9 of Cups, Page of Wands, Temperance. And I kind of want to put them together like that, like, I can't remember how many, they all just flopped out together, to be honest, but they seem to sit nicely here in these two for me. Because the 5 of Swords is that fucking sword that's sitting in the back of your head, right? Your head is down here in this card, and holding onto the head, and what we have is an eye in the crown. Check it out, it's really extraordinary. There, you see that? Despite having an eye at the top of your head that is open and can see something else, right? And this could be your spirituality or, you know, whatever it is, but probably. There are still swords that are sitting in the back of your head that are affecting your movement. And that's how I come to see these things as, you know, cognitive loops. Where despite all of our higher knowledge and our higher wisdom, we still manage to get stuck in those low fucking cycles of blame and self-doubt and, you know, issues of self-worth and self-confidence and all of those kind of things. Like, there's almost always another sword that we can pull out, you know. Whereas right at the beginning, where is it? Here, it's 10 of Swords, right? In the past, you literally were there. Right? And there were swords in you everywhere. Well, not literally, right? Metaphorically there. But the swords were in. Right? That was a difficult period in your life. Whole body speared with swords. Now, it's all just here. It's about the mental patterns that you are repeating. There. 9 of Cups. It feels to me like you are drawing closer in October to a sense of you and who you are and your happiness through contemplation of this. Now, like I said, this is supposed to be a really, really good card, and it is, right? It is. But it's not what I'm feeling when I'm looking at it. I think it's interesting that they're all presented in a doorway too. And the whole point of this reading from the very, very beginning seemed to be the action of you realising that you've got the keys on your belt and walking through that doorway. Right, there it is. Right there, in the back. You have to get to this before you reach this. 9 of Cups. It's a kind of emotional rebirth, Gemini. It's kind of a starting again. You know, in some ways it might be literally like a, you know, reparenting work that you are doing on yourself. But the thing that stopped you from walking through the door, the thing that stopped you from even noticing that you had the keys, was this, all of this time. And as this is addressed in October, so it becomes replaced with this. And this is all about taking true responsibility for yourself. And if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that I am so fucking shit hot on personal responsibility. It's not even funny, right? I think it's so important. It's so critically important on all sorts of levels. Because I think it gives us an opportunity to rebirth ourselves properly. Right? And yes, it has the glorious advantage of not having all of the shit that other people put on you, right? But it's also incredibly liberating, because we keep ourselves trapped by our own minds so much. And somebody who is so filled with mental energy, as you are, Gemini, will always find ways to trip yourself up, right? The key with it is to sit with it, right? And actually, you know, both the High Priestess, which is an incredibly passive card, Magician sat there cross-legged, you know, communing with some things, and the Hanged Man, right? These are not all the things that you do outside of yourself. There's not the, you know, the huge mental energy that you throw at a situation. This is about sitting with it and allowing it to come up and going, you know, and you have my full permission to interrogate it when whatever it is comes up. You know, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? You know, what value do you bring to my day-to-day existence? And then, you know, you'll find it kind of stuttering and going, because it doesn't. Because this is just one of a number of swords that are sticking out of the back of your head. And we've got the Page of Wands, and we've got Temperance here. And Temperance is absolutely, it's about balance and moderation, but it is about healing first and foremost, and then see how we go. You know, in a very short space of time and very few cards, we go from a little baby angel right in the center there to a fully fledged, oh, she looks badass, right? Those wings probably bulletproof and everything, right? She's just up there, big fucking wings, pouring from one cup into another in a state of peace, in a state of balance, in a state of incredible healing. Page of Wands here is very similar in meaning to the Ace of Wands. Right? It is about starting on a new path and a new way of living, a new way of engaging with your life altogether. Whether or not you are doing the same things, it's about what you choose to experience rather than what happens at you from the inside of your own mind. And it all comes down, like I say, to personal responsibility. Like, it feels like a month where you're probably going to be up in your head quite a lot for most of it. Maybe a little bit scatterbrained, a little bit scatty, just like me, I guess. You know, kind of looking to all intents and purposes like you are incredibly distracted, but actually doing some really, really powerful internal work, which will change the way that you see everything. I mean, when you go back into your past and you start to see things there that you did not see at the time, it absolutely, by definition, has a ripple effect, and it ripples forwards to the way that you see yourself now. More than that, it ripples forwards again in terms of what it is that you want, what it is that you think that you can achieve, what you deserve. All of these things have a knock-on effect where you going back and examining and just making sure that the narrative that you are working with is one that is accurate, because it probably is accurate, but the field of view is probably very, very narrow, even if you have done this work before. How? Yeah. It's very interesting, Gemini. Very, very worthy work. I'm going to go over to Vimeo now and start pulling some more cards over there, because I feel like feel like we've got much more to talk about. So if you'd like to join me over there, I would be delighted to see you. If not, don't worry, not a problem. I will see you next time. For now, just know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.